Our silly game saved my daughter's life. When my daughter Riley was 8, she became obsessed with detective shows. Not the cartoon ones, but the real crime documentaries where investigators would catch criminals by noticing tiny details that didn't add up. She begged me to teach her how to spot liars and read people like the detectives on TV. I thought it was harmless fun, so we created what we called the truth game. We'd practice at restaurants and parks, watching strangers and pointing out tells. Crossed arms meant defensive. Touching the nose meant possibly lying. Looking up and left meant accessing memory. Looking up and right meant creating a story. We'd test each other constantly. Riley got scary good at it. She could tell when her mom was hiding a surprise party. She knew when her teacher was bluffing about pop quizzes. By the time she turned 11, we'd mostly stopped playing. Riley got busy with middle school and friends and soccer practice. The game became just a funny memory we'd bring up sometimes at dinner. When Riley turned 15, she started volunteering at the youth center downtown. It was run by this guy named Marcus, who everyone loved. Former college athlete, coached basketball, organized community events. My wife thought he was wonderful because he got Riley interested in helping others. Riley seemed happy there, coming home energized and talking about the kids she mentored. Then about 3 months in, Riley started making strange comments. We'd be eating dinner and she'd randomly say, "Marcus touched his ear 7 times during our staff meeting today." Or, "Marcus looked at the ceiling when he talked about his college days." I'd nod and keep eating, not thinking much of it. But the observations kept coming. He repositioned his watch 3 times when parents were picking up kids. He stepped backward when the police officer came to give that safety talk. His voice got higher when someone mentioned background checks. I finally asked Riley why she was so focused on Marcus, and she just shrugged and said she found people watching interesting again. But her voice was too casual, too practiced, like she was trying to sound normal. Then Riley started asking weird questions. "Dad, if someone was really good at hiding something, how would you catch them?" Or, "What if someone seemed nice but did all the lying tells you taught me?" I told her that people who lie professionally learn to control their tells, which is why you look for clusters of behaviors instead of single signs. She went quiet after that and didn't bring it up again. 2 weeks later, Riley came home and announced she was quitting the youth center. When I asked why, she said she wanted to focus on school. But she wouldn't look at me when she said it. Her hands were shaking. I found her that night sitting in her closet with her knees pulled to her chest. "Riley, what's really going on?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "Remember how you taught me that really dangerous people don't show normal tells because they've practiced? That they create new patterns instead?" I nodded. "Marcus never shows the usual signs, Dad, but there's something else. Every time parents arrive early, he touches his phone exactly 3 times. Every single time. Like a ritual. And last week, I noticed he does it faster when it's the younger kid's parents." I felt cold. "Why does that matter?" She pulled out her phone and showed me photos she'd been taking from across the room. Marcus always angled his body to block the doorway when parents came early. He'd position himself between them and the back hallway. And Riley had noticed that on days when parents arrived unexpectedly, certain kids would be missing from the main room. I asked where those kids were, and Riley said she checked. The supply room. Always the supply room. And Marcus would take exactly 4 minutes before bringing them back out. She'd timed it 17 times. Her voice was steady now, but her hands were still shaking. "I wanted to be wrong, Dad. I've been watching for 2 months trying to prove myself wrong. But yesterday, I followed him when he took Emma to the supply room. I stood outside the door. I heard him tell her that their special exercise had to stay secret. That if she told anyone, the bad men would take her away from her mommy. I called the police from my car that night. They said they'd look into it, but I couldn't wait for bureaucracy. I drove to the youth center at 7 a.m. the next morning and demanded to see Marcus immediately. The front desk volunteer said he'd called in sick. First time in 3 years. I pushed past her and went straight to his office. The door was locked, but through the window I could see his desk had been cleared out. His computer was gone. The photos on his wall were gone. Everything except the furniture. I called Riley's cell phone, my heart hammering. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you right now?" I demanded. "School. First period just started." "Why?" "Because the police just called me. They went to Marcus's apartment an hour ago with a warrant based on your statement. And what they found in his bedroom is linked below or on my channel. Marcus has been on our radar for years," Detective Morales tells me, her voice steady, but her eyes revealing the horror of what they've found. "We're sitting in an interview room at the police station. The wall's a sterile beige that makes the crime scene photos on the table between us even more jarring. I can't look at them anymore. The images from Marcus's apartment haunt me. The hidden cameras disguised as air fresheners, the locked cabinet with USB drives meticulously labeled with children's initials, the false wall in his closet that hid a small room with sound-dampening foam, but he passed background checks." I say, my voice hollow. "Everyone loved him. That's how they operate," Detective Morales explains. "Marcus Williams isn't even his real name. We've identified at least 3 aliases he's used in different states. He's careful, moves every few years, changes his appearance slightly, targets communities that trust easily." My phone buzzes with another text from Riley. She's been at school all day, trying to maintain normalcy while I've been here, looking at evidence that confirms our worst fears. I text back that I'll pick her up soon. "We need Riley to look at some photos," Detective Morales says gently. "Not the explicit ones, just images of children from the youth center. She might recognize patterns we don't see. Connections between the kids he targeted." I nod, feeling sick. She'll help. She's been watching him for months. When I pick up Riley from school, her face is pale but determined. She climbs into the car and immediately asks, "Was I right?" I grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. "Yes, and it's worse than we thought." On the drive to the station, I explain what the police found, carefully omitting the most disturbing details. Riley listens silently, her face a mask of concentration. "They had a warrant for his apartment," I tell her. "They found hard drives with photos and videos." I swallow hard. "There was a hidden room behind his closet, recording equipment, items he'd taken from kids, like trophies." Riley nods, unsurprised. "The supply room at the center. 4 minutes. That's where he'd take them." At the station, Detective Morales greets Riley with respect, not condescension. She explains that they need Riley's help identifying children in non-explicit photos found in Marcus's possession. "We need to know who might have been victimized," she explains. "You've been observing him for months. You might notice connections we'd miss." Riley sits at the table, her back straight. "I can help. For the next 2 hours." Riley looks looks through photos of youth center events, identifying children Marcus paid special attention to. She points out subtle patterns, how he positioned himself near certain kids, how he created situations to isolate them. Emma was definitely one, Riley says, pointing to a girl about 9 years old. He always found reasons to have her help with equipment. And this boy, Jaden, Marcus would offer him extra basketball practice, always alone. Detective Morales takes careful notes. How did you first notice something was wrong? Riley's voice is steady now. It was the phone thing. 3 touches, always 3. Whenever parents showed up unexpectedly, it was too consistent. Normal people don't have patterns that precise. And he'd position himself to block the hallway to the supply room. That's where we found most of the recording equipment, Detective Morales confirms. Hidden cameras in the supply closet, in the bathroom adjacent to it. I feel sick again. How many children? We've identified 17 so far, she says quietly. Based on the evidence in his apartment, we believe there are more. Riley's hands clench into fists. He told them it was a secret game. That's what he said to Emma, that their special exercise had to stay secret. Detective Morales slides a folder across the table. We found this in his apartment. It appears to be notes on the children, which ones were suitable, which ones had parents who asked too many questions. Riley opens the folder and freezes. He was watching me too. She points to a page with her name at the top. He knew I was observing him. The detective nods grimly. That's likely why he fled. You scared him, Riley. You noticed what everyone else missed. But not soon enough, Riley whispers. You saved other children, Detective Morales says firmly. Marcus has operated in 3 other states that we know of. No one has caught him before. Your observations gave us the evidence we needed for the warrant. As we prepare to leave, Detective Morales pulls me aside. Your daughter has remarkable observational skills. We'll need her to testify eventually. I look over at Riley, who is studying a map on the wall where they've pinned locations connected to Marcus. She'll do whatever it takes. We both will. In the car, Riley is quiet for a long time. Finally, she says, remember when we first started playing the truth game? You said sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones everyone trusts. I nod, throat tight. I kept watching him because I wanted to be wrong, she continues. I wanted it to be my imagination, but every pattern held. The phone touches, the 4 minutes, the way he'd single out certain kids. You did everything right, I tell her. You observed, you collected evidence, you trusted your instincts. Riley looks out the window. They're gonna find him, right? Yes, I promise her. They will. Good, she says, her voice hardening. Because there are other kids out there, and I know their faces now. As we pull into our driveway, Riley turns to me. Dad, I think I want to study criminal psychology in college. I reach over and squeeze her hand. I think you'd be extraordinary at it. Our silly game had become something far more important than either of us could have imagined. It had saved lives, and it wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks after Marcus's apartment raid, I'm sitting in a conference room at the FBI field office. The walls are covered with photos, timelines, and maps with red pins marking locations across 5 states. Detective Morales is here, along with 2 federal agents and a prosecutor from the Justice Department's Child Exploitation Division. We've identified connections to trafficking operations in Ohio, Kentucky, and Missouri. Agent Delgado explains, pointing to a complex network diagram. Marcus wasn't just a lone predator. He was recruiting for a larger organization. The words hit me like physical blows. I'd prepared myself for the horror of what Marcus had done, but not for the scale of it. The youth center was his hunting ground. Agent Delgado continues. We found evidence that he specifically sought employment there 3 years ago after identifying it as an ideal recruitment site. Riley sits beside me, her notebook open, taking meticulous notes. She insisted on being here, arguing that she'd already seen enough to understand what was happening. I couldn't protect her from this reality anymore. She discovered it herself. We need to talk about the other staff members, Riley says suddenly, looking up from her notes. Miss Winters knew something was wrong. The room goes quiet. Detective Morales leans forward. What makes you say that? 3 times I saw her interrupt Marcus when he was isolating kids, Riley explains. But then she'd just walk away. And once, I overheard her tell him that parents were asking questions about the supply room. She said, be more careful, not stop what you're doing. Agent Delgado exchanges glances with her partner. We've been investigating the administrative staff. Your observation matches our suspicions. The director refused to act on previous complaints. I add, my voice tight with anger. I found out yesterday that 2 parents raised concerns about Marcus last year. They were told they had misunderstood his teaching methods. The meeting continues for hours as Riley methodically walks them through everything she observed. Patterns of behavior, specific children Marcus targeted, staff members who looked the other way. Her detailed observations leave the federal agents impressed and disturbed. You have an extraordinary memory for detail, Agent Delgado tells her. This will be invaluable for the case. Later that afternoon, I find myself in the youth center director's office, my hands shaking with barely controlled rage. You knew. I say, my voice dangerously quiet. Parents complained, and you did nothing. Director Hansen's face flushes. Those complaints were vague. Marcus was a valued employee with an exemplary record. He was a predator using your center to find victims. I slam my hand on his desk. And now we know at least 3 staff members were complicit in covering for him. That's absurd, he sputters. We had no idea. The FBI has emails, Director Hansen. Emails where you were explicitly warned about Marcus taking children to the supply room for private coaching. Emails you deleted but that they've recovered. His face goes pale. My daughter noticed what was happening in 2 months of volunteering. She's 15. What's your excuse? The next day, Riley sits in a room with child psychologists and FBI victim specialists, helping identify other children who might have been victimized. She reviews photos, points out behavioral changes she noticed in certain kids, and explains Marcus's patterns of grooming. Emma stopped playing with other kids after her special training started, Riley explains, and Jaden began flinching whenever an adult raised their voice. Marcus always chose kids who were already vulnerable, ones with busy parents or family problems. By the end of the week, Riley's testimony has helped identify 5 additional victims who weren't in Marcus's photos, children who might otherwise have never been discovered. That night, Riley sits at our kitchen table, staring at her notebook. I keep thinking about what I missed, she says quietly. There were probably signs earlier that I didn't catch. I sit beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. You saw what trained professionals missed. You trusted your instincts when adults dismissed them. The FBI agent said Marcus has been doing this for at least 8 years, years, Riley says. 8 years, Dad. How many kids before someone finally noticed? That's not on you, I tell her firmly. That's on the adults who were supposed to protect them. Riley looks up at me, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion shadowing them. I want to testify. I want to face him in court and tell everyone exactly what I saw. It won't be easy, I warn her. His lawyers will try to discredit you. I don't care, she says. I have the truth. I have my notes. I have the patterns. The next morning, we learn that Marcus has been tracked to a motel in Kentucky. He was traveling with false identification, apparently heading toward the Tennessee border. The FBI believes he was trying to reach contacts in his trafficking network. Detective Morales calls to tell us the news. They found 3 phones, a laptop, and $20,000 in cash in his motel room, she says. He was planning to disappear for good, but they got him, I say, relief washing over me. Yes, and it's because of Riley. Her observations gave us the probable cause for the initial warrant. Without that, we might never have uncovered the full operation. When I tell Riley, she doesn't celebrate. She just nods and says, good, now we need to make sure he never gets out. That evening, as we prepare dinner together, Riley suddenly stops chopping vegetables. Dad, I think we should develop a program to teach other kids what to watch for. The patterns, the warning signs. I look at my daughter, this remarkable, observant, brave young woman, and feel a surge of pride so intense it nearly overwhelms me. I think that's an excellent idea, I tell her. The truth game could help a lot of people. Riley nods, her expression resolute. Marcus isn't the only predator out there, and I'm not the only one who can learn to see the patterns. As I watch her return to methodically cutting carrots, I realize our lives have been permanently altered. What began as a silly observation game has transformed into something profound and powerful. Riley has found her purpose, born from trauma, but focused on protection. The FBI has scheduled another interview tomorrow. The prosecutor wants Riley to walk them through Marcus's grooming techniques in detail. It will be difficult, but I know she'll face it with the same determination she's shown throughout this nightmare. The truth game continues, but the stakes have never been higher. I wake up to the shrill ring of my phone at 3:17 a.m. Detective Morales' voice is tense on the other end. We got him. Kentucky State Police just pulled Marcus over for a broken taillight. He tried to run, but they tackled him in a ditch. He had 3 different IDs and $20,000 cash in the car. Relief floods through me, but it's immediately followed by a wave of nausea. Did he hurt anyone else? No, he was alone. But he had a burner phone with messages to contacts in Tennessee. We think he was heading to a safe house. I sit up in bed, fully awake now. Does Riley know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. After hanging up, I walk down the hall to Riley's room. She's already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her notebook open. They caught him, I say from the doorway. Riley doesn't smile or celebrate. She just nods once, her face illuminated by her desk lamp. Where? Kentucky. Trying to cross into Tennessee. She makes a note in her book. He was heading to his network. The FBI map showed connections there. I sit on the edge of her bed. You should try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense. I can't sleep, she says, flipping through pages of observations. The prosecutor called yesterday. She wants me to walk through everything I noticed about Marcus's patterns. I need to be ready. The preliminary hearing begins 3 weeks later. Riley and I sit in the courtroom as the prosecution lays out the case against Marcus Williams, or Anthony Mercer, which we now know is his real name. The evidence is overwhelming. The photos and videos from his apartment, the false identification documents, the network of contacts across 5 states. But it's when the prosecutor starts detailing his systematic grooming of children at the youth center that I have to fight the urge to leap across the courtroom at him. Marcus sits at the defense table, face impassive, occasionally whispering to his attorney. The defendant established a pattern of identifying vulnerable children, the prosecutor explains, displaying a timeline on a large screen. He would first observe them in group settings, noting which ones seemed to lack parental attention or showed signs of emotional need. Riley's hand tightens around mine as the prosecutor continues. He would then create opportunities for special training, one-on-one sessions that isolated these children. Over time, he would escalate physical contact, all while establishing secrecy as a normal part of their relationship. The defense attorney objects repeatedly, trying to exclude evidence and testimony, but the judge overrules him each time, her face growing increasingly grim as the pattern of abuse becomes clear. When it's Riley's turn to testify, I watch her walk to the witness stand, her shoulders squared despite the fear I know she feels. She's dressed in a simple blue button-down shirt and dark pants, her hair pulled back. She looks older than 15. Miss, can you tell the court how you first became suspicious of the defendant? The prosecutor asks. Riley's voice is steady. It was the phone pattern. 3 touches, always exactly 3. Whenever a parent arrived unexpectedly, it was too consistent to be natural behavior. Then I noticed the timing. 4 minutes in the supply room with certain kids. Always 4 minutes, never more or less. And what did you do with these observations? I started keeping detailed notes, times, dates, which children, what he said to them. I recorded the patterns in his behavior and the changes in the children afterward. The defense attorney is already on his feet. Objection. This witness has no professional training in behavioral analysis. She's a teenager playing detective. Your Honor, the prosecutor counters. The witness's observations led directly to the search warrant that uncovered overwhelming physical evidence. Her testimony establishes the defendant's methodology. I'll allow it, the judge rules. Continue. For the next hour, Riley methodically walks through everything she observed. The coded phrases Marcus used with children, how he positioned himself to block sightlines to the supply room, how he would touch his phone 3 times when interrupted. The defense attorney's cross-examination is brutal. So you decided, based on a game you play with your father, that Mr. Williams was some kind of predator? He asks, his tone dripping with condescension. Riley doesn't flinch. I observed patterns of behavior that were consistent with grooming techniques. And where did a 15-year-old learn about grooming techniques? I read about them after I noticed the patterns. I wanted to understand what I was seeing. Isn't it true that you have no formal training in psychology or criminal behavior? Yes, that's true. And isn't it possible that what you call patterns were simply normal interactions that you misinterpreted because you were looking for something sinister? Riley looks directly at him. The hard drives full of photos of children from the youth center suggest I didn't misinterpret anything. A murmur runs through the courtroom, and the defense attorney's face hardens. Your Honor, I move to strike that response. Denied, the judge says sharply. The witness may continue. The most damning testimony comes the next day when Diane Winters, the assistant director of the the youth center, takes the stand. She's agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for a reduced sentence. Yes, I knew something inappropriate was happening, she admits, unable to look at Riley or me. Marcus told me he was giving special attention to certain children who needed extra support. I suspected it was more than that, but the center needed his basketball program. It brought in donations. Did you report your suspicions? The prosecutor asks. No, Winters says, her voice barely audible. I told him to be more careful. I didn't want to lose my job. Riley's face remains impassive, but I can see her knuckles turning white as she grips her notebook. During a recess, Detective Morales approaches us in the hallway. The prosecutor thinks this is going well. Marcus's lawyer has already approached about a possible plea deal. No deals, Riley says immediately. He'll just get out sooner and do it again. Detective Morales nods. The prosecutor feels the same way. With the evidence we have and the connections to the larger trafficking ring, she's pushing for maximum sentences on all counts. Back in the courtroom, Marcus finally takes the stand in his own defense. He denies everything, claiming the photos were planted, the witnesses coerced, the children confused by leading questions. But when the prosecutor shows him Riley's notebook, with its meticulous documentation of dates, times, and patterns, something in his face changes. You noticed me, he says, looking directly at Riley for the first time. No one ever notices. The courtroom goes completely silent. That's not a question, Mr. Mercer, the judge says sharply. Please respond only to counsel's questions. But the damage is done. His momentary break, the admission implicit in his words, hangs in the air like poison gas. That evening, Riley and I sit on our back porch, watching the sunset. She hasn't spoken much since we left the courthouse. You did amazing today, I tell her. The prosecutor said your testimony was crucial. Riley nods, still looking at the horizon. He said no one ever notices. That means there were others before me who could have stopped him. But they didn't. You did. She turns to me, her eyes fierce despite her exhaustion. The truth game isn't just a game anymore, Dad. It's how I see the world now. I can't unsee the patterns. I put my arm around her shoulders. I know. And that's going to make you extraordinary at whatever you choose to do with it. Riley leans against me, the weight of everything she's carried these past months finally showing. I want to help train other kids to see what I saw, to recognize the patterns before it's too late. As the sky darkens and stars begin to appear, I realize our lives have been permanently altered. The game that started as a way to pass time on road trips has become something profound, a lens through which Riley sees the truth that others miss, and a tool that might protect countless children in the future. Tomorrow we'll return to court for more testimony. But tonight, we sit in silence, watching the patterns of stars emerge in the darkening sky, each one a point of light in the vastness. The courtroom falls silent as the judge's voice rings out. 25 years without the possibility of parole. Marcus, or Anthony Mercer, as we now know him, doesn't flinch. His face remains blank, but I catch the slight tightening of his jaw, the only indication that he's processing the sentence that will keep him locked away until he's an old man. Riley sits beside me, her back straight, her notebook closed for the first time in months. She doesn't smile or celebrate. She simply watches as the bailiffs lead Marcus away in handcuffs. It's over, I whisper, squeezing her hand. She shakes her head slightly. Not for the kids he hurt. Outside the courthouse, reporters cluster around us, microphones thrust forward like weapons. The prosecutor had warned us this would happen. Marcus's case has become national news. The story of a predator finally caught because a 15-year-old volunteer noticed patterns that adults missed. Riley, how does it feel knowing your observations led to this conviction? A reporter calls out. Riley looks directly into the cameras. I'm thinking about Emma and Jaden and all the other kids who are still trying to recover from what he did. I hope this helps them heal. Her composure amazes me. She's been carrying this weight for months, but she stands tall, her voice steady. Detective Morales meets us at our car. The FBI wants you to know they've identified 3 more members of the trafficking network based on Marcus's devices. This is bigger than we initially thought. Will they be arrested? Riley asks immediately. Warrants are being executed as we speak, Morales confirms. Your testimony created a domino effect, Riley. You didn't just stop Marcus. You helped uncover an entire operation. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Riley sits at our kitchen table surrounded by papers and her laptop. She's been working on something every night after dinner, refusing to show me until it's ready. It's a curriculum, she finally explains, turning her laptop toward me. For kids at the youth center. I'm calling it Pattern Recognition, How to Trust Your Instincts. I scan the document, impressed by its organization and detail. She's created age-appropriate modules, teaching children to recognize warning signs in adult behavior, not to scare them, but to empower them. I've been talking with some of the other victims, Riley continues. We're starting a support group. The FBI victim specialist is helping us set it up. That's incredible, I say, marveling at my daughter's strength. How many kids are involved? 7 so far, but there are others who aren't ready to talk yet. She tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. We meet on Thursdays. I'm going to lead it. Pride swells in my chest. Riley, I need to do this, Dad, she interrupts. I need to help them understand that what happened wasn't their fault, that adults were supposed to protect them and failed. The youth center has undergone a complete overhaul. The director resigned in disgrace after the FBI investigation revealed he'd ignored multiple warnings about Marcus. 3 other staff members were charged with criminal negligence. The building itself has been redesigned with clear sightlines and glass walls for all meeting spaces. Riley and I are invited to speak at the reopening ceremony. I've prepared some remarks, but Riley hasn't written anything down. She doesn't need to. The truth game started as something my dad and I did for fun, she tells the crowd of parents, children, and community leaders. We'd observe people and try to figure out their stories based on patterns in their behavior. But patterns can reveal darker truths, too. She explains how Marcus's behaviors followed predictable sequences, the phone touches, the 4-minute supply room visits, the isolation of vulnerable children. Predators count on us not noticing these patterns, she continues. They count on adults being too busy or too trusting to see what's happening right in front of them. But we can change that. After the ceremony, a woman approaches us with a young girl, Emma, one of the first victims Riley identified. The girl hesitates, then steps forward to hug Riley tightly. You saw me, Emma whispers, when no one else did. Riley hugs her back, and I have to turn away to hide my tears. That night, I find Riley at the kitchen table again, researching college programs. Forensic psychology, she explains, showing me the University of Michigan's website. They have a special focus on predatory behavior patterns. I've already emailed the department chair about their early admission program. You're only 15. brain. I remind her gently. You have time to decide. I already know what I want to do, she says with absolute certainty. The FBI agent I've been working with says they have internship programs for college students. If I start preparing now, I could qualify by sophomore year. I look at my daughter, this remarkable, observant young woman who turned a simple game into a life-saving skill, and realize she's found her path forward. 2 months later, we're invited to FBI headquarters to consult on a training program. Riley's truth game methodology is being adapted into a curriculum for agents working on child exploitation cases. The patterns she identified in Marcus's behavior have helped create a more comprehensive profile of how predators operate in community settings. We've been approaching this all wrong, Agent Delgado tells us as she leads us through the training facility. We've been focusing on demographic profiles and criminal histories, but Riley's observational approach, looking for behavioral patterns rather than matching suspects to profiles, has proven more effective in early identification. Riley takes meticulous notes as always, but I notice something different now. There's a confidence in her posture, a sense of purpose that wasn't there before. The trauma hasn't disappeared. She still has nightmares, still flinches when someone mentions the youth center, but she's channeling her experience into something powerful. On the drive home, Riley stares out the window, watching the landscape blur past. Dad, she says finally, remember when you first taught me the truth game? You said everyone has patterns, and if you pay attention, you can learn to read them like a book. I nod, keeping my eyes on the road. I remember. I think that's what I'm supposed to do with my life, she continues. Read the patterns that other people miss. Protect kids who can't protect themselves. At a stoplight, I turn to look at her, my brilliant, brave daughter who saw what trained professionals missed, who trusted her instincts when adults dismissed them, who transformed her trauma into purpose. The world needs more people like you, Riley, I tell her. People who pay attention, people who see the truth. She smiles a real smile, the kind I haven't seen much since this all began. Maybe we should write a book about the truth game, so other kids can learn to see the patterns too. The light turns green, and as we drive toward home, I realize that's exactly what we'll do. What started as a silly road trip game has become something profound, a methodology for uncovering truth, a tool for protection, a way to bring predators like Marcus to justice. The truth game continues, but now it's not just for Riley and me, it's for all the children who need someone to notice, to see the patterns, to speak the truth that others miss.